Welcome to Reflections on Jackie Robinson. I'm Monica Pearson. It's been over 75 years since Jackie Robinson became the first African American to play Major League Baseball in the modern era, breaking the sport's long-standing color barrier. His on-field success with the Brooklyn Dodgers and his courage in the face of racism helped challenge and eventually dismantle segregation in professional sports. Jackie Robinson would go on to transcend baseball, becoming one of America's greatest civil rights leaders. This Black History Month, we celebrate the memory of Jackie Robinson by bringing you archival interviews from the Tim McCarver Show, featuring Jackie's wife, teammates, and others sharing stories of the Hall of Famer's life and legacy. We begin with a remarkable lady who was by her husband's side every step of the way until his death in 1972. Joining Rachel Robinson is Hall of Fame second baseman Joe Morgan.
Rachel, you met Jackie 68 years ago.
Yes.
68 years ago,
yes.
In 1940.
Yes.
You remember the circumstances?
Absolutely. I was a lowly freshman and he was a senior. And
at UCLA.
At UCLA. And he was big man on campus because he had his letter in 4 major sports. So when he was brought to an area where the black students used to gather in Kirchhoff Hall, which is a special place, there were only a few of us. And we used to gather there between classes. And when Jack was brought in to meet us, I expected him to be arrogant. I really, with all the things that were going on around him. And what surprised me and made me love him right away was that he was not arrogant. He was very confident, but he was friendly. He was accessible. He wanted to be with us, and it was a great beginning.
When I think of the early days of Jackie Robinson, the one thing that stands out about him, obviously his athletic talent, but it was his smile.
His smile. He had a beautiful smile.
He had a beautiful smile.
Absolutely beautiful.
And of course, your life took many turns. Did you ever anticipate an early life? You were married in 1946, and obviously the next year, Jackie broke the color barrier.
Yes,
Did you ever anticipate a life of where you had to protect your man and you grew to protect your man above anything else?
I didn't anticipate that, of course, because I didn't know that Jack was going to even have a job in baseball at the time that we married. But I was brought up in a family where the women were very protective of their men. It came very naturally to me to be with him and to be beside him, not walking behind him, as they always say.
And I guess the first 2 years were the toughest, 1947 and 1948.
Yes.
What would you think of Branch Rickey?
I admired him greatly. Over time, I felt a great deal of affection for him because he not only was an innovator, someone who's pioneered and decided to do something very special with this experiment, but he was so consistent in standing beside Jack all the way through. No matter what happened, he was there.
I never thought of it in those terms as experiment. I mean, Branch Rickey was a businessman. He realized that baseball did not have the black audience. Black customers did not come to the games.
No.
So, I mean, obviously, there were more than altruistic means for Branch Rickey to try this experiment.
He was a consummate businessman. He had started some innovations before this experiment, in terms of what he was doing in the farm teams and that kind of thing. But also, he was a man with a social conscience.
A lot of people don't realize that Jackie Robinson actually tried out for 2 major league teams, one of which was the Boston Red Sox.
Yes. That was a charade. He was taken there with other players and given what they called a tryout, but no major people from that team were even present at the tryout. So it was a farce, and they were very upset about it.
Right. In your book about yours and Jackie's life, you talk about, in many ways, you were prepared for what was ultimately going to happen with Jackie in 1947 by the near court-martial, because Jackie didn't move from the middle of the bus to the back of the bus in 1943 when he was in the Army. All right, tell that story if you would.
Well, Jack was serving at Fort Riley, Kansas, and he was riding on a bus on the Army base when he sat down next to a woman who appeared to be white, although she wasn't, and but it was up front of the bus, or middle of the bus, and the driver told him to move back to the back seat, and he refused. The driver then was very upset and drove him to a center where the officers were, Army officers were, and they had him taken off the bus, and then they charged him with all kinds of things like disruptive behavior or whatever. Even though the Army was segregated in those days, they were not allowed to segregate on the base.
Oh, I see.
And Jack knew that. But see, that's one of the things Jack was always ahead of, of the game, because he knew the rules.
Right.
And he had decided he was going to sit where he wanted to sit. And he stood up to that position. He was court-martialed and acquitted and left the Army there very shortly thereafter.
He was also an officer, too.
He was a lieutenant.
That's exactly.
He was an officer. He wasn't
Yes.
just another soldier.
I'll be back with more from Rachel Robinson and Joe Morgan right after this.
Reflections on Jackie Robinson is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Don't do your taxes, let our experts do them for you. And also brought to you by Planet Oat Milk. After his retirement from baseball in 1956, at the age of 37, Jackie Robinson was determined to remain a voice for equality, and not only in baseball, but across America. More on Jackie's life after baseball from Rachel Robinson and Joe Morgan.
I only read this letter because it's in Rachel Robinson and Jackie Robinson's book. And the letterhead is from the Netherland Plaza in Cincinnati, where the Dodgers were playing at the time. And the letter starts out, "Darling, the game starts at 8. I did so much want to meet you at the airport, but time does not permit it. I love you so very much, and knowing I am to see you tonight makes things a lot better." What a warm feeling. But I think the letter points out how very important you were in Jackie's life.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
I'm sure of that. We were engaged 5 years before we married, and I was determined to finish college. That's why we didn't get married sooner. And then he went into the Army, of course. But he was also a letter writer, and some of his feelings got expressed very potently in his letters. I look forward to his letters. I got one every day while I was in college, and chocolates, a box of chocolates on Friday. So everybody came to my room on Friday, and we shared those chocolates. But he was a deeply sentimental person, a gentle person. Everyone knows the aggressive Jackie Robinson, but my family, we shared the joy of having someone who could love and could express that love.
We talked about your education earlier. You said not only did you finish school, but you got your master's degree after Jackie had finished playing baseball, and he used to often take you to school, right?
He'd take me to. I was in the School of Nursing psychiatric program at NYU, and Jack was working for Chock-full of Nuts at that time, and he would drive me. We'd come down to New York together from Stamford, where we lived, and he would drive me to class, and then he would go to the Chock-full of Nuts stores and pick me up afterwards. Yes.
Joe, we talked about you and Jackie Robinson being the only African-American second baseman in the Hall of Fame. Nobody was more thrilled to be in the Hall of Fame than Jackie Robinson. He was elated, right?
Well, I really think that part of it was he was still working, though. I mean, inside he knew that he was paving the way for me and for other African-American players to get into the Hall of Fame. If he didn't go, how was I ever going to get there, or how were the other African-American players going to ever get there? So I think that Jackie knew what it meant, not just to him and to Rachel and his family, but he was still doing things for the whole society. You know, he was making it better, and I really believe that's why he felt so deeply, you know, concerned about it and getting in. Because, you know, Jackie had done so many things. I mean, you know, whether he made the Hall of Fame or not, he's still going to be a Hall of Famer.
Jackie Robinson's epitaph reads, "The value of a life is measured by its impact on other lives." Were you a little bit surprised, Rachel, that Jackie wasn't invited to stay in baseball after his playing days immediately?
We were surprised and disappointed.
I bet.
Jack had hoped to be asked to be a manager, and he was never approached for that position. And in fact, Buzzy Basie says today that Jack wouldn't have been a good manager, would not have been a good manager. Oh,
Yeah, I know.
what does he know?
That's exactly. I have to disagree with him
I
on
disagree
that.
too. He studied that game. He knew that
Yeah.
game. He could work with men, and he would have made a great manager.
But in 1972, in Jackie's last public appearance before your World Series
Right.
in 72, I think Jackie died in
72.
late October of
Yes.
72. But Jackie made mention of the fact that a black manager is right around the corner, and sure enough, just 2 or 3 years later, Frank Robinson became the manager of the Cleveland
He
Indians.
said he would never be satisfied until he could see a black manager running a team.
We talked about in our opening how Jackie was socially and politically connected, and certainly his politics were very connected once he retired. He knew Malcolm X, he knew Martin Luther King Jr. very well, and only 8 years after Jackie retired, the Civil Rights Movement bill was signed by Congress.
Yes, I believe Jack was a catalyst, one of the catalysts for the Civil Rights Movement, because his activities began in the 50s before Dr. King was on the ground, and before Rosa Parks, before the legislation. I think he was one of the catalysts, and he was very determined that there should be equal opportunities in America, and very disappointed when things didn't, at the end of his life, we were still not there. But I think he had an influence on the things that did occur thereafter.
I want to make one point here that she's trying to be humble here, but Jackie wasn't just about African Americans. He wanted all Americans to have that freedom and
Exactly.
to have the chance to be whomever they could possibly be. So I think that's one thing I think that's misunderstood about Jackie. He wasn't just pushing the black movement, he was pushing the movement for America to make everyone have the equal opportunities. And I think that's where the civil rights thing comes in for me. And I studied it, I know a lot about it, she knows everything about it.
And Rachel Robinson, the driving force behind the Jackie Robinson Foundation, 35th anniversary this year.
Yes. We incorporated the foundation in 1973, the year after Jack passed, and of course you know that was a devastating time for us. But we were determined, the family and friends were determined to create a living memorial, a living tribute to him, and also something that would carry his legacy forward, an active program. We provide minority students with 4 years of tuition, and we have a comprehensive program. We just don't give them money and wish them well. We are mentoring them, and the most important thing about us, the evidence of our success, is that we have a 97% graduation rate, which is the highest in the country and double the national average.
That is terrific.
So the quality of the program is very important to us.
Rachel, I think you know about how you've picked up the baton and carried on your life and Jackie's life so elegantly, and people see that, and I know you know that, and you hear that often, but I want to express that once again. Thank you very much.
I'm very blessed. Tim, I feel very blessed to have had the opportunity to be challenged the way I have, and have had this support that I've had, that it's been enormous.
At the age of 100, Rachel Robinson continues to carry on the memory and work of her husband. The Jackie Robinson Foundation has now provided scholarships to over 1,800 students. And just last year, the Jackie Robinson Museum opened its doors in New York City. When Reflections on Jackie Robinson returns, the first player to go directly from the Negro Leagues to the majors shares his experience following in Jackie's footsteps. In July 1947, 3 months after Jackie Robinson broke MLB's color barrier, Larry Doby took the field for the Cleveland Indians as the first black player in the American League. And like Robinson, Doby was met with racial discrimination at ballparks across America. In his interview with Tim McCarver, Doby details the obstacles he and Robinson faced as the first 2 African Americans in Major League Baseball.
On being the first black in the American League, Larry Doby has been quoted as saying, "The only difference was that Jackie got all the publicity. You didn't hear much about what I was going through because the media didn't want to repeat the same story." Is that a true quote?
I believe that sincerely, because I think that during that time, certainly if you're a person of Afro-American, and we had segregation, we all know that.
Sure.
The treatment is not going to be different because I'm in the American League, is in the National League, because at the time, I think most people, a lot of people didn't think that this could happen. A lot of people didn't want it to happen, and there were a lot of people who wanted it to happen. So, and Jack being the first, I've always thought that he should have gotten the publicity because he was first. He made it possible for me to be a part of it. But when you start comparing the things that you have to go through as far as being in Major League Baseball, and we're both men of color, there's not going to be any easy on either one of us because we're both not going to stay in the hotel in certain towns. We're both not going to eat in certain restaurants. If you're in spring training, when you're going to different towns to play, you can't go into the restaurants with the other players, so the players have to bring you back a sandwich. So you're going through the same situation as far as the segregation part of it is concerned. And that's not a knock on the media. You print the stories about one person having a tough time. Why print the story about another person having a tough time? Because I think it's assumed that you're going through the same type of situation.
A lot of people may not realize that at that time, the armed services were not integrated. The government workers were not integrated until Harry Truman.
Exactly, and that's why I've always said to baseball and baseball people that we've got something that we can do to show diversity, to show what it means as far as the bringing people together, because you did something before someone signed legislation for you to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the great things about that, Timmy, is that we are learning from each other. There's no question in my mind.
Did you and Jackie learn from each other?
Oh, certainly.
Did you ever talk about it?
Yeah. The thing that we talked about most, and you may not be old enough to remember, but there were certain people on teams that were just there to be bench jockeys, they call them. So he knew exactly how many bench jockeys in the American League was on me, and I knew how many was on him because we'd talk about these people. And other than that, there was nothing to talk about because we're going through the same type of situation. Mm-hmm. But we did know about the people who were the so-called bench jockeys on different teams that would give you a tough time. One of the things about the whole situation, and I admire Jack, because you admire Jackie because you know what he's going through, because you're going through the same thing. And one of the things I think that was important, I didn't think too much of it in the beginning, but one of the things that was important in the initial part of being involved in baseball, Major League Baseball at the time, was when I walked into Bill Veeck's office, there was a notebook about that high, where from the day I was born in Camden, South Carolina, until I got off the train in Chicago, and the things that I had done and things the good things and the bad things. Thank God there wasn't too many bad things. But the interesting thing about that is that after we went through that notebook about the things that I did and things I didn't do, is that now you got to go out and perform under these circumstances. Mm-hmm. Do you think you can? And being 22 years, yeah, sure, I can play baseball. Baseball is baseball. You never thought about this is the highest you can go, the level-wise. Major League Baseball is the highest you can go. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that maybe some people would doubt, that they'd never seen that many Negro League players play.
I have been meaning to ask you this for a long time. Do you think you would have had a better career had you not had to have gone through what you went through in 1947?
I think that from a consistent standpoint, in other words, 48 you have a good year, 49 so-so year, 50 a good year, 51 a so-so year. I think one of the reasons is you sort of wanted to feel a part of the total picture as far as the team was concerned with the 25 or whatever people. I think when you go back and look at the situation as far as high school, college is concerned, you were part of that total as far as the team was concerned. Here even in 53, you wasn't still a part of the whole structure of the team.
So you were working at being a part of the whole more than you were working at your baseball skills.
Aspect of
So
it.
you do think you would have been a better player, and honestly.
Yes, I think I would have been a better player, particularly, as I said earlier, from a consistent standpoint. Tim, you know, you've been in this game, been around this game a long time, and you know you have your good years and your bad years, you know what I mean? But sometimes you look at it from the standpoint of work as hard as anybody as far as the game is concerned. You know, like I practice was fun for me. I love to practice, you know. And by practicing, of course, certainly you get better. But I think that you're trying to adjust to a certain part of our society, which some people did not want you to be a part of that society. And you're certainly playing baseball with the greatest people in the world that could play the game of baseball. There's no easy person in during that time as far as the baseball was concerned. So what you're trying to do is do two things, and one thing is bothering you a little bit, and your concentration is not what it should be. You had someone in the stands may say something that's not acceptable. It bothers you a little bit. People say, well, it shouldn't bother you, but you know, or you don't hear. Every player hears. I don't care who he is, or what he does. He hears the boos, he hears the name called, and the whole bit. So I think that, as you said, I think from a standpoint of consistency, I think I would have been a better player if some of the things were a little bit more easier to accept.
Despite the discrimination he faced in the majors, Larry Doby persevered. The 7-time All-Star and World Series champion was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1998. When we come back, one of the first teammates to support Jackie Robinson shares his memories of their time together on the Brooklyn Dodgers. When Jackie Robinson made his major league debut on April 15, 1947, it was Brooklyn Dodgers starting pitcher Ralph Branca who stood at his side for player introductions. This was the beginning of a lifelong friendship. In a discussion with Tim McCarver, Branca describes playing alongside Robinson during that historic season. He's joined by Lynn Coleman, who served as chairman of the Jackie Robinson Foundation for nearly 20 years.
Jackie Robinson broke in 1947. Ralph, you were there. You won 21 games that year as a 21-year-old.
Right. What Jackie did, not only for baseball, but for this country, is he really broke the color barrier, but it was the first time that he broke the segregation rule, that baseball could be integrated. And it took the Supreme Court 7 years before they passed the Civil Rights Bill to vindicate Jack and vindicate the black community.
And if all of you young folks out there who have gone to a ballpark over the last 8 to 10 years, you see number 42 in perpetuity in all the parks, and that was your idea, Lynn.
Yeah, Tim, I was helping in one of those in charge of the festivities for the 50th anniversary, and I was trying to think of something that we could do that would really distinguish Jack from all other ball players, because I think the greatest moment in baseball history was when he walked on that field in 1947. And I was actually driving on a highway in New Jersey, and it just hit me, retire his number throughout the game. And so I got to the office and called Commissioner Selig right away and told him about the idea. And obviously, I guess he liked it because he followed through with it.
What a great idea, and it's such affection that, and for good reason, obviously, that you referred to him as Jack or Jackie.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I guess maybe I refer to him as Jack because I'm with Rachel Robinson, his widow, quite a bit, and I know she refers to him as Jack, and so I always hear her say Jack, Jack. So I think Jack's been ingrained. I, as a child, had the opportunity to meet him twice, and I can just remember the total excitement that I had in being able to shake the great man's hand.
He was 28 years old when he broke in. What was it like in the clubhouse? Everybody can see Pee Wee Reese with his arm around him. Pee Wee, of course, being from Louisville, Kentucky. What was it like behind the scenes, Ralph? What was it like?
You hit on a point. The guys from the South, like especially Dixie guys from Alabama, they grew up with a certain set of mores down there, and where blacks were segregated, and really he did not want to play on that team. And a lot of players voiced their resentment and didn't want to play, and Ricky just traded them away. But Dixie eventually came around, like in, say, August. He realized that Jackie was a big part of this team's success because he was playing a strange position in a very, I'm going to say, tough time for him, the angst, the trauma, the taunting that went on. And in spite of that, he had a great year. I once said, did he win? No, he triumphed. But he was, he was very quiet. He kept his place, which Ricky had said, turn the other cheek. And he didn't look for any conflict with anybody else. He just did his job, and he just stood his ground. But I thought he played extremely well under the circumstances. He led the league in stolen bases, hit .297, Rookie of the Year, which baseball has so nicely named. The Rookie of the Year is the Jackie Robinson Rookie of the Year award.
Some 25 years later, you were a pallbearer in Jackie's funeral.
Right. Well, I was always close to him because I grew up when I said my street was League of Nations, so it was like second nature for me to accept Jackie.
What if it had been someone else? What if another African-American had been chosen?
Well, I think Jackie was uniquely prepared, and I think, Branch Rickey, when he chose Jack to break the color line, knew about Jack's attributes. And of course, this was not the first time that Jackie had challenged the system. He'd also done it when he was in the Army. And so when he got to the major leagues, Jackie had to succeed because he, in a sense, he carried the weight of all of black America right on his broad shoulders. But in 1948, Truman desegregated the armed forces. And it wasn't until 1964 that you had a Civil Rights Act. So Jack, in a sense, foreshadowed all of these things that were going to sweep through America. So that it was Jack had to succeed, and he did.
And I really marveled that Ricky picked Jackie out. I'm sure there were many people that were better ball players, and they looked at it to have a better ball player to be successful on the field. But Branch knew that he needed somebody who could turn the other cheek and stand up to all the criticism and the taunting and that went on. So I think Ricky picking him out was really the key to the success of breaking the color barrier.
The patience that this man exuded, I know it's been talked about a lot, but for Ricky had said that you've got to do it for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah,
I think 2
couple of years, yeah.
Yeah.
It really was 3.
It was 3 years.
3 years, which knowing Jackie was totally out of character. He was feisty. He was the greatest competitor I ever saw. And he would tangle with anybody if he knew he was right.
How did he do it?
Control. And I got to tell you, the secret weapon was when he went home at night, Rachel. That was his secret weapon, and it's not really a secret because she's so great. She's still great. But I think when he went home, if he was down, she boosted him up. If he was angry at somebody, she would calm him down. And I think Rachel really helped Jackie get through that period.
A writer of the Times, I think it was Red Smith, called him the loneliest man in America. We can all empathize with that.
I think we relate to that, Tim. Also, I think, every time the memories we have of Jackie are of Jackie dancing off first base or running down the third base line and upsetting the pitcher and, getting balks, or in those days, as you know, you really only stole bases to win games, and in 8th or 9th inning, Jackie stealing the big base to win the game. But I think also when every time Jackie juked off first base or something, it was not only upsetting the pitcher, but really it was a challenge. It was a challenge to America to be a better place and to be a better country and to be accepting of all peoples. And certainly, I think Jackie, there's no one that really could have achieved what Jackie did in terms of integrating the game.
More from Ralph Branca and Lynn Coleman when Reflections on Jackie Robinson returns. Jackie Robinson not only paved the way for African Americans to join Major League Baseball, his early success forced many white players and fans to face their own prejudices. To discuss the beginnings of this cultural shift in America, more from Ralph Branca and Lynn Coleman.
Red Barber was doing your games in those days, Ralph. Red was from the South. And I read a quote recently where he said that he had to do that desegregation was a torture to him, and that he had to do a self-examination of himself when Jackie Robinson broke in. A man from the South, I'm from Memphis, and I can understand that because it was culture shock for me, never having played with black players, to have played with a black player for the first time in 1959. So I know exactly what Red Barber was talking about. And my point is, you hear so much about Jackie Robinson and what he did for black America, but what about white America?
Well, truthfully, he made white America realize you can't judge a man by the color of his skin. You judge him from what he is and what he can do, for his capabilities and his abilities. And so I think it helped white America. I mean, the South was, strictly segregated, and he looked down on blacks as second-class citizens. And I think that mentality disappeared. I think that the South has now grown up and they accept blacks as equals. And I think that it was a great move. I mean, sociologically, this whole country changed. The whole world changed because of Jackie.
What is fascinating, guys, is that in reading about Jackie Robinson and his plaque at Cooperstown, it says Jack Roosevelt Robinson, Brooklyn, New York, 1947 to 1956. And it goes on to talk about his exploits on the field, but it doesn't mention the fact that he was the first African American to play in Major League Baseball. I find that fascinating.
Tim, I hadn't seen that until you showed it to me, and I find it fascinating too, because as I said, I think the greatest moment in baseball history was simply when Jack walked onto that field that day in 1947, and obviously, the legend grew, and he opened the door for players that followed. You made the point also about opening up America. Everything. There is no question but that he was a tremendous civil rights leader, and it was not just on the ball field, but if you look at his life after baseball and what he had to contribute in the civil rights arena, it in a sense it paralleled his magnificence on the baseball diamond.
Have you ever thought about what if it hadn't happened in 1947? When it would have happened after that, and who would have been involved?
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly, once again, I certainly give credit to Branch Rickey. He saw his opening, and there's no question that when Judge Landis was commissioner, he was not going to allow it to happen. I think in my mind, one of the unsung heroes is Commissioner Happy Chandler, because he worked with Rickey and said, we're gonna do it. And Branch was able to bring Jackie in, and then right after him, you had in the American League, Bill Veeck, of course, brought the great Larry Doby in. The Dodgers, I believe, in 1947 also brought Dan Bankhead.
Right, correct.
Dan Bankhead up. So the doors were opened, and you made the point earlier in the show about turnstiles and wanting attendance. Well, let's also make the point about a great reservoir of talent, and that when the teams began to integrate, you had other great African-American ball players that followed that helped their teams win. And by helping the teams win, those turnstiles, of course, turn too. And I think that, when we talk about heroes, certainly Branch Rickey is right up at the top of that list. I mean, he challenged in just as Jack had to go in and integrate the game throughout the dugout, Branch Rickey challenged the establishment of Major League Baseball and really the social acceptance of this country, and when he went and brought Jackie into the game. So I think Branch Rickey in and of himself is a great hero, and is someone who I think, as a black American, I look at as a real champion.
Yeah, I was going to interject. I think the black community was really awaiting something like this, that they could be accepted. So they accepted that the breaking the color barrier was something that they accepted. Now people look back in retrospect and they say, well, Branch Rickey did it for money, which may or may not be true. But I think
certainly some element
of
that.
Could be an element. But I think that the black community, to answer your question that you asked Glenn, was that they were anxious to be accepted, to be equal. And I think that was really the big part of it. And they took such great pride in Jackie. I mean, they loved Jackie. In fact, Branch Rickey did another thing. He had two writers because he was a lonely man. But he had Sam Lacey from the Baltimore Sun and Wendell Smith from the Pittsburgh Courier go and travel with Jackie and be his companion so he wouldn't be lonely. So I think that was another great move Rickey did, to get him, at least get him through the first year.
Everybody knows about the legacy of Jackie Robinson. Is there anything that is new that can be said about Jackie after all these years?
Well, I would just say he's an absolutely true American hero, and certainly as a child he was my boyhood hero, and it's really been a thrill for me to be able to be chair of his foundation, and I think his legacy lives on not only across America but through the foundation and the young men and women that are being able to attend college through the auspices of the Robinson family and those who contribute to the foundation.
Ralph Branca credits Jackie Robinson as the only teammate who consoled him after giving up the game-winning home run to the Giants in the 1951 playoffs, a hit that would be dubbed the shot heard around the world. When we come back, personal stories from one of America's greatest sports writers who spent time at the ballpark with Jackie. Few people knew the Brooklyn Dodgers teams of the 40s and 50s better than Roger Kahn, a lifelong fan turned sports writer. Kahn covered the Dodgers during their 1952 and 53 seasons. The author of one of baseball's best books, The Boys of Summer, sat down with Tim McCarver to share intimate stories of his time traveling with Jackie Robinson and the Dodgers.
What a remarkable experience it had to be to cover that team as a 24-year-old reporter for the Herald Tribune. In 1953, was that the year?
52 I started, and 53 I did it. Suddenly I was thrust into a team of people who become legends. Just to take the Hall of Fame names, Duke Snider, Roy Campanella, Jackie Robinson, Pee Wee Reese. And in addition to that, I was thrust into the middle of America's greatest social problem, bigotry. And I've been with the team in Florida for a little while when we went on a train with the Braves and started to go north. We were totally integrated on the train. Off the train, there was a white taxi, a black taxi, stands were segregated. So the team was at the center of this sea change in America.
Pardon me, Roger, but at the time, the team was barnstorming north from spring training?
From spring training.
From Vero Beach,
Vero Beach, and you go up to Jacksonville and over to Mobile, Montgomery, Chattanooga, Nashville, playing the Braves every day. And Jackie Robinson was no longer the only black player, but he was the focus. And incredible things happened. His life was threatened if he were to come to bat in Atlanta.
Even as late as 1953?
52.
52.
And he might have skipped the game. It was a meaningless exhibition game. And I remember very vividly, we were in the clubhouse, and there were a whole bunch of FBI fellows. I already learned a good way to be a reporter was to go around the batting cage and get the little bits of conversation and the humor.
You're learning too, right?
Oh, God. So I'm going to go out around the batting cage, and Jackie Robinson is going to be taking batting practice, and there's some maniac in the stands with a rifle. So I wasn't too eager to go on the field. Nobody was. We huddled in the clubhouse. And after a while, Pee Wee Reese said, hey, Robinson, when we go out on the field, I want you to do me a favor. Jack said, what? He said, well, don't stand too close to me. That guy might not be a very good shot. It broke the tension. First time at bat, Robinson singled. I think, what a hit, what an act of concentration. So I was with a wonderful team, a team of open, decent guys, a team that would win pennant after pennant, and a team that was changing America in ways that even now we're learning. I mean, we didn't understand everything that was going on then, but this was a team saying to the country, black and white can work together, and the Republic will not only survive, but will become stronger.
As research, if there was such a thing, preparation for your time to cover that team, what had you heard about the Dodgers from the time that Jackie joined the team in 1947? Because this was 6 years later.
After the war, when Reese was added, Robinson, and here came Carl Furillo. My father used to take me to the ballpark early so we could watch outfield throwing practice. That was Furillo's arm, and the kid in center field, Branch Rickey, said, steel springs. He doesn't have legs, he has steel springs. That was Duke Snyder. Campanella came over. Wonderful collection of people. Jackie and I hit it off. My feeling for Jack was, this was, well, he was doing a great thing, and he was a wonderful man. He hired me to be his ghost. I started a black sports magazine, and so I was his very pale ghost. I would do a column by me, and I would do a column with Jack. I just typed it. Typical column, my feud with Leo DeRocher is over. And we'd bat these things out, and I think I was getting $150 a month for the 2 columns, and the magazine folded. And I was in the clubhouse, and Robinson said, did you get paid? And I said, no. I said, where are you going? I said, home. He said, no, you're not. You're coming with me. Jack took me up to the magazine offices, and there was a publisher. He said, why didn't you pay Roger Kahn? Publisher said, I don't have any money. Robinson said, why didn't you pay Roger Kahn? So I have a little. Got me 120 of the 150. So I like to say that when Jack died, I not only lost a friend, I lost the best collection agent I ever had.
When Reflections on Jackie Robinson returns, we hear how Jackie's triumphs inspired a generation of Hall of Famers. Reflections on Jackie Robinson is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Don't do your taxes, let our experts do them for you. And also brought to you by Planet Oat Milk. What began as an experiment by Brooklyn Dodgers owner Branch Rickey, the signing of Jackie Robinson forever changed the face of professional baseball. His inclusion in 1947 as the first black player in Major League Baseball's modern era was met with resistance from players and fans alike. But through it all, Robinson excelled, paving the way for black players from the Negro Leagues to finally be able to share the field with their white counterparts. Robinson's sacrifice and impact on baseball are immeasurable, and his legacy as a civil rights leader continues to be celebrated today, long after his death in 1972. As we close our tribute to Jackie Robinson, we are reminded of the inspiration he instilled in a nation through the words of those he helped open the doors for. I'm Monica Pearson. Thank you for watching Reflections on Jackie Robinson.
You can't simplify what this man did and the sacrifices that he made and what he had to go through for us to come later.
Never thought about playing baseball as a living until Jackie Robinson, of course, broke into baseball and gave every black kid in the South and across this country really hope that if they were good enough that they could play professional baseball. I never thought about it. He was the man that inspired me not only as a baseball player, but as a human being.
I know what got me interested in wanting to be a major leaguer, and that was when Jackie Robinson came along and came to the major leagues, and we started reading about Jackie.
The dream began in 1950 when I was playing on the Barnstorming tour with Jackie Robinson All-Stars. And I could remember Jackie came up to me and He said, you know, you can play in the major leagues. So I was so excited about that. I called up my dad and I said, Dad, you know, Jackie just told me I could play in the major league. He said, son, you listen to him. So he knows how to play the game, and he wouldn't be kidding you.
Before Jackie, I had three guys that I could talk about. That was Ted Williams, Stan Musial, and Joe DiMaggio. But we had no blacks in there. So when Jackie came in '47, oh boy, I have a chance now. When I look at the money that I was making, I said to myself, boy, when I see Jackie, I am going to thank him, and he's not going to know what I'm talking about. But I am going to thank him because he took such a beating for 2 years. He didn't fight, he didn't say anything, but he played ball.